Taking responsibility means accepting that if something needs to change in your life, you are the starting point of that change. It means understanding that no one will magically build your skills for you, fix your financial situation, or discipline your habits. If you want to learn something new, you have to study it. If you want to improve your income, you have to develop value that others are willing to pay for. If you want a better future, you have to make better decisions today, even when they are uncomfortable or inconvenient. This mindset shift is powerful because it gives you control. At first, responsibility can feel heavy, but over time it becomes free. When you stop depending on external rescue, you stop feeling powerless. You begin to realize that even small actions taken consistently can change your direction. You may not be able to change everything instantly, but you can always change something. You can wake up earlier, learn a new skill, apply for opportunities, practice discipline, or stop habits that are holding you back. Many people underestimate how much control they actually have. They think they need a perfect environment to succeed, but in reality, most progress starts in imperfect conditions. People build successful careers while struggling. People improve their health while feeling unmotivated. People create opportunities while facing rejection. The common factor is not the absence of problems, but the decision to act despite them. The moment you fully accept that no one is coming to rescue you, your mindset shifts from waiting building. You stop looking for signs and start creating structure. You stop expecting motivation and start relying on discipline. You stop hoping for change and start working for it. That is where real transformation begins, not in external help, but in internal decision. Most people misunderstand what actually produces change in life. They believe that thinking about success, planning for it, or waiting until they feel ready is enough to eventually move forward. But reality does not respond to intention alone. Nothing in your life shifts just because you want it to shift. Change only begins when action replaces hesitation. The gap between where you are and where you want to be is not filled by thoughts or wishes, but by consistent behavior that aligns with your goals. Action is uncomfortable at the beginning because it forces you to confront uncertainty. When you try something new, you are not guaranteed success, and that uncertainty makes people hesitate. So they delay, they overthink, they gather more information, waiting for a moment when everything feels clear and easy. But that moment rarely arrives. Clarity often comes after action, not before it. You only understand what works when you start doing it, not while sitting and analyzing it endlessly. Many people stay stuck because they confuse preparation with progress with process. They feel productive when they watch videos, read advice, or plan their future in detail. It gives a temporary sense of movement without actual change. But real progress has a cost. It requires energy, repetition, and discomfort. It demands that you step in situations where you might fail, look inexperienced, or struggle at first. That is why most people avoid it, even though they know what they should be doing. Time does not reward waiting. It amplifies whatever you repeatedly do. If you take action daily, even in small amounts, those actions begin to stack on top of each other. Skills improve gradually, understanding deepens, and opportunities begin to appear that were not visible before. On the other hand, if you avoid action, time still moves forward, but your situation remains the same or even worsens because missed opportunities cannot be recovered. Every day spent in hesitation is a day where nothing is built. The people who move forward in life are not always the smartest or the most talented. They are often the ones who are willing to act before they feel completely ready. They understand that readiness is not a requirement, but a result. Confidence is built through repetition, not imagination. You cannot think your way into competence. You have to work your way into it. Each attempt, even if imperfect, teaches you something that no amount of planning can replace. Waiting for the perfect moment is one of the biggest traps that keeps people stagnant. There will always be reasons to delay. You will never have perfect conditions, unlimited energy, or zero fear. If you wait for those things, you will wait indefinitely. Action teaches you how to operate despite imperfection. It shows you that progress is messy, uneven, and sometimes slow, but still valuable. Even small actions matter more than most people realize. A single step taken consistently can shift the direction of your life over time. It does not need to be dramatic or extreme. What matters is repetition. When you repeatedly choose action over inaction, you begin to build momentum. That momentum makes the next step easier, and the step after that even easier. Eventually, what once felt difficult becomes part of your routine. In contrast, inaction also compounds. The longer you avoid doing the work, the more intimidating it becomes. Tasks grow in your mind when they are ignored. Skills that were once simple to start feel overwhelming later because you have built mental resistance around them. This is why many people feel stuck, not because the task is impossible, but because they have delayed it for too long. Nothing changes until behavior changes. Your circumstances are closely tied to what you repeatedly do each day. If your daily actions remain the same, your results will remain the same. If you want a different outcome, you must introduce a different pattern of action. This does not require perfection, only consistency. Even imperfect effort moves you forward, while perfect planning without action keeps you exactly where you are. Ultimately, waiting is passive and action is active. One keeps you in the same place, the other moves you forward. Life does not reward you forward. Life does not reward intention alone. It responds to what you actually do. Most people misunderstand the role of motivation in real progress. They treat it like a fuel that should always be available before they start doing anything meaningful. When they feel inspired, they act. When they don't, they stop. This creates a cycle where effort depends entirely on mood, and mood is unstable. Life cannot be built on something that changes every hour, every day. Discipline, not emotion, is what separates temporary effort from long-term results. The people who achieve meaningful success are not the ones who always feel like working, but the ones who continue working even when they don't. Motivation is unpredictable because it is influenced by external and internal conditions that are constantly shifting. Sleep, stress, environment, social media, and even small emotional changes can affect how motivated a person feels. Relying on it means your progress will also become unpredictable. Some days you will feel powerful and productive, and other days you will feel completely stuck. If you only act on good days, your growth becomes inconsistent and slow. Over time, inconsistency creates frustration because you know what you want to do, but you are not doing it regularly enough to see results. Discipline works differently because it removes decision-making from emotion. Instead of asking to do, I feel like doing this today, discipline answers what I do regardless of how I feel. It is built through repetition until actions become automatic. When something becomes a habit, it no longer requires emotional energy to begin. You don't negotiate with yourself every time you need to work. You simply do it because that is the standard you have set. This is why disciplined people often seem consistent even when they are not highly motivated. They are not relying on constant inspiration. They are relying on structure. Systems are more powerful than temporary bursts of effort. A system is a set of routines that keep you moving forward even when your mindset fluctuates. For example, setting a fixed time for work, breaking tasks into small, repeatable steps, and removing distractions creates an environment where action becomes easier than avoidance. When your environment supports discipline, you reduce the mental effort required to start. Over time, repetition strengthens behavior patterns, making productivity a default state rather than a forced one. This is how long-term consistency is built without depending on emotional highs. Discipline also shapes identity. When you repeatedly act in a certain way, you start to see yourself as the type of person who does that thing. A person who shows up daily begins to think of themselves as disciplined. A person who quits easily begins to expect inconsistency from themselves. Identity is powerful because people tend to act in alignment with how they see themselves. Once discipline becomes part of your identity, skipping work feels unnatural while showing up feels normal. This internal shift is what makes long-term success sustainable rather than temporary. In the end, motivation is useful only as a spark, but discipline is the engine that keeps everything moving. One starts the process, but the other sustains it. If you wait for motivation, you will always have delays. If you build discipline, you create reliability in your action. Progress in life is not determined by how inspired you feel occasionally, but by what you consistently do regardless of how you feel. The real difference between people who improve their lives and those who remain stuck is not desire, but the ability to act without needing to feel ready every time. Over time, discipline also reduces internal conflict because you stop arguing with yourself about what needs to be done. There is less procrastination, less guilt, and less wasted energy. Instead of constantly restarting, you maintain steady progress. This stability is what eventually creates results that look effortless from the outside, but are built through repeated commitment behind the scenes over time. Consistently expand Keynote No. 5 without any heading, without any wording on 700 words expand. Keynote No. 6 without any heading, without any wording on 700 words. Ending paragraph consistency is what turns ordinary effort into extraordinary results over time. Most people underestimate it because they are drawn to intensity rather than repetition. They prefer doing something big once rather than doing something small every day. But life does not respond strongly to isolated bursts of effort. It responds to patterns. What you do repeatedly becomes more important than what you do occasionally. This is why consistency is often the hidden factor behind success that looks sudden from the outside, but is actually built slowly over a long period. When someone is consistent, they create momentum. At the beginning, progress often feels slow and even discouraging because results are not immediately visible. Many people quit during this stage because they expect quick feedback. They assume that if something is working, it should show immediate outcomes. But most meaningful progress follows a compounding pattern. Early effort builds foundation, not results. Just like laying bricks, the structure takes shape gradually. If a person stops early, nothing visible remains, even though effort was made. If they continue, that invisible foundation eventually becomes something stable and strong. Consistency also builds skill through repetition. Every time you repeat an action, you refine it slightly. You notice small mistakes, adjust your approach, and become more efficient without realizing it immediately. Over time, these small improvements accumulate. What once felt difficult becomes easier, but what once required full concentration becomes natural. This is how skill development actually happens in real life. Not through one perfect attempt, but through many imperfect repetitions that gradually reduce error and increase understanding. Another important effect of consistency is identity formation. People begin to see themselves based on what they repeatedly do. If someone studies every day, even for a short time, they start to identify as a learner. If someone exercises regularly, they begin to see themselves as someone who takes care of their health. Identity is powerful because it influences future behavior. Once a person believes that this is who I am, they naturally make choices that align with that belief. Consistency strengthens identity, and identity then reinforces consistency, creating a cycle that supports long-term growth. Consistency also reduces dependence on motivation. When actions are repeated regularly, they become part of routine rather than emotional decisions. This is important because emotions are unstable, but routines are stable. A person who relies on motivation will always struggle with inconsistency because feelings change. But a person who relies on routine continues, even when feelings are not supportive. Over time, this creates reliability in behavior, which is one of the strongest predictors of long-term success. One of the biggest advantages of consistency is compounding effect. Small actions may seem insignificant in the moment, but when repeated over long periods, they accumulate into large outcomes. Saving small amounts of money regularly builds financial stability. Practicing a skill daily builds expertise. Sabr. Improving slightly each day leads to significant change after months or years. The key is that the growth is not linear, it builds on itself. Each step makes the next step more effective, even if the difference is not noticeable immediately. Most people fail not because they never tried, but because they stop too early. They begin with energy, but when results do not appear quickly, they lose patience. They assume the effort's not working and move on to something else. This constant restarting prevents any real progress because nothing is given enough time to develop. Consistency requires patience with invisible progress. It requires trust that effort is building something even when it cannot yet be seen. Disruption and consistency, even small breaks, can slow down progress significantly because it interrupts momentum. Every time a habit is broken for long periods, restarting requires additional effort. This is why maintaining even minimal daily effort is more powerful than intense but irregular effort. The goal is not perfection, but continuity. Keeping the chain unbroken matters more than how strong each individual link is. Over time, consistent effort creates stability in life. It reduces chaos because actions become predictable. It removes uncertainty because progress is no longer dependent on sudden bursts of energy. Instead, it's built into daily structure. This stability eventually leads to results that feel natural rather than forced. People often call this success, but in reality, it is simply the outcome of repeated actions sustained over time. In the end, consistency is what transforms potential into reality. It is not about doing everything at once, but about doing the right things repeatedly, even when progress feels slow. Over time, repetition becomes transformation, and small actions become significant results through accumulation and persistence without interruption or dependency on temporary motivation or external pressure guiding every step forward steadily across time. Your life is not shaped by rare moments of effort, but by the patterns you repeat every day. Habits are the invisible structure behind every visible result. They decide how you spend your time, how you respond to challenges, how you manage opportunities, and ultimately, what direction your life moves in. Most people look at outcomes and assume they are caused by sudden events, luck, or external circumstances. But those outcomes are usually just the final expression of long-term habits that have been building quietly over time. Every small action you repeat becomes part of a system that defines your future. The way you start your morning, the way you handle distractions, the way you treat responsibilities, and the way you respond to discomfort all accumulate into patterns that either support growth or limit it. These patterns are often so familiar that you stop noticing them. You may think you are making new decisions every day, but in reality, many of your choices are automatic responses shaped by what you have repeatedly done in the past. This is why changing results without changing habits is nearly impossible. If your daily habits remain the same, your life has no reason to change. Improvement requires disruption of routine behavior. For example, if someone consistently avoids difficult tasks, their skills will not develop. If someone repeatedly chooses comfort over effort, their opportunities will remain limited. If someone spends most of their time on unproductive activities, their results will reflect that allocation of time. Life does not respond to intentions alone, it responds to repeated behavior. What you do consistently becomes your baseline, and your baseline determines your outcomes. Habits also shape your identity over time. When you repeat an action frequently, your mind begins to associate that behavior with who you are. A person who regularly learns starts to see themselves as someone who grows. A person who regularly delays tasks begins to see themselves as someone who struggles with discipline. This identity then reinforces future action, making it easier to continue the same behavior. This is how people remain stuck without realizing that their identity is being shaped by repetition rather than choice in the moment. One of the most powerful aspects of habits is that they operate silently. They do not require constant decision-making. Once formed, they guide behavior automatically. This means that even when you are not consciously thinking about improvement, your habits are still working in the background, either building your future or holding it back. This is why small actions matter more than they seem. A single decision repeated daily has more impact than a large effort done occasionally. Change becomes difficult not because people lack knowledge, but because habits resist disruption. The brain prefers familiar patterns because they require less energy. Even when those patterns are harmful, they feel comfortable because they are known. This is why people often return to old behaviors after short attempts at change. Without replacing old habits with new ones, improvement becomes temporary. Real change happens when new patterns are repeated until they become automatic. Your environment also reinforces your habits. The people you spend time with, The routines you follow and the spaces you occupy all influence your behavior. If your environment supports distraction, it becomes harder to stay focused. If it supports discipline, it becomes easier to maintain progress. This means that habits are not just personal choices, but also reflections of the systems around you. Changing results often requires changing both behavior and environment together. The important truth is that transformation is gradual. It does not happen through one decision, but through repeated alignment of actions with goals. Each time you choose a productive habit over a destructive one, you slightly adjust the direction of your life. These adjustments may feel small in the moment, but over time they accumulate into significant change. The difference between where you are and where you want to be is often the result of repeated small behaviors that either moved you forward or kept you in place. Ultimately, your life is a reflection of what you do most often, not what you do occasionally. If you want different results, you must first look at the habits that are producing your current reality. Until those habits change, expecting a different outcome is unrealistic. Real improvement begins when daily behavior starts aligning with the future you want to create, and that alignment only becomes stable through repetition over time. In the end, your life is not shaped by what you occasionally think, plan, or promise, but by what you repeatedly do without thinking. Habits quietly decide your direction, and your direction eventually becomes your reality. If you continue repeating the same actions, you will continue getting the same results, no matter how much you hope for change. But the moment your daily habits shift even slightly, your future begins to shift with them. That is why real transformation is never sudden. It is built slowly through repeated choices that either move you forward or keep you stuck.